Okay, we're going to continue working on the elimination method. It's just that we're going to extend our knowledge on the elimination method. So what we worked with previously was when we had either our x's were opposites or ones that would cancel each other out, or our y's were. Today what we're going to do is we're going to go through and figure out what happens when we don't have two variables that will cancel each other out. Like, what are we going to do? So we're going to actually have to add one minor step. As you guys get older, you'll be actually adding more than one step, but we're going to start out pretty basic because this is something new to you. So here I have a set of equations, and when I look at them, I'm noticing, remember in the elimination method, we were looking for when they have something that's similar in either our x's or our y's, but they have to be opposites of each other. So here, these numbers, -2 and -4, those won't cancel each other out. But when I look at my y's, oh, I have a 9 and a 9. But here's what we have to realize. These are both -9s, okay? So really, if I go through to do that, -9 plus a -9 would give me a -18. So a very common mistake is you'll look at that and say, those will cancel each other out. But remember, they have to be opposites of each other. So when I go through to work this, I'm going to have to do something different. And that is, I'm going to need to change one of these equations to the opposite. So if I were to go through and do this, it wouldn't matter which equation I picked. I'm going to go ahead and pick the top one, just so I can write it down underneath. I'm going to take this entire top equation times its opposite, or a -1. Now, to me, I just say I'm going to rewrite it. Doing an opposite, if it was a negative sign, I'm going to make it a positive sign. But that's because I've worked with it a lot. So what you guys are probably thinking is, I'm going to do -1 times -2, which would give me a positive 2x. Okay, -1 times a -9 gives me a positive 9y. And a -1, yes, we take this clear out to that also, because I'm changing the entire equation. Notice how I put the whole equation in a parenthesis. So -1 times -25 gives me a positive 25. Okay, so I want you to look back before I cross out this equation and take note that this and my 2x are exact opposites. See how it was negative, now it became a positive. It was a -9, now it became a positive 9 down below. It was a -25, now it became a positive 25. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cross out that top equation so it doesn't look so confusing. So this is gone. Now we revert back to what we did in our previous part of the lesson. We're going to go through and find our opposite, which we already strategized. We were getting rid of our y's because the 9s were the same number. We just had to do the opposite. So now it's a -9 and a positive 9. Those are gone. Okay, so -4 plus a positive 2 gives me -2x equals -23 plus a positive 25 gives me a positive 2. Now I would divide by -2, divide by -2. I just found out that my x in my xy combination is a -1. Okay, now it doesn't matter which one I go back in and substitute in for. I can use either of my two original equations, or I can even use my new equation. Totally up to you. I think I'm going to use my new equation, and here's why. Because it's giving me a positive y, and that way I don't have to solve for a negative. So I'm going to take this equation that I had originally changed, and I'm going to substitute in where I have my, whoops, not my y, my x. I'm going to substitute in there, okay? So it becomes 2 times a -1 plus 9 times y equals 25. Okay, so here I get -2 plus 9y equals 25. And now we'll do a +2, 9y equals 27. Divide by 9, divide by 9. 27 divided by 9 gives me a positive 3. So there is my system of equations. So the last part of this really isn't new. It's that first step of converting our original equation so that we can cancel something out that is the new part, okay? So don't think of this as all brand new. Most of it is just reviewing what you did in the previous part of the lesson. But we just have to add that next step. Okay, so let's go through and practice a few of these. So we're gonna look at our equations. We're gonna see what might be the easiest part to change. And sometimes it really doesn't matter. You're gonna have to just pick one of your variables and decide how can I change it so that it's an opposite. Sometimes you have to change both equations. And I will be honest with you, if it's something where I have to change both equations, I tend to use a different method. I'll either solve for y, I'll use substitution method, I'll use the algebraic method. I don't usually do elimination method if I have to change both equations. So here, these are both different numbers with the x's, but these are both ones. Okay, so I'm seeing that it's my y's I want to change. Both right now are positive, so this is going to be similar to what we just previously did. I'm going to go ahead and change, doesn't matter which one I change, I'm going to change the bottom one. And I'm going to take it times a -1. Okay, so my two equations, well, I'm still going to keep the 8x plus 1y equals -16. I'm going to change this bottom equation. So -1 times a -3 gives me a positive 3x. And a -1 times a positive 1 gives me a -1y. And a -1 times a -5 gives me a positive 5 in the back end. So take note, if I'm just going through and changing the symbol from positive to negative, notice how my bottom equation up here, the numbers stayed the same except for the symbols in front of each of them changed. So it was a -3, it became a positive 3. It was a positive 1y, it became a -1y. It was a -5, it became a positive 5. So some of you will pick up on that pretty fast, and some of you will need to do that distribution every time until you get more comfortable. Okay, so now let's go through and let's work this out. All right, so here's my elimination. Those are the same but opposites. So 8 plus 3 gives me 11x equals -16 plus a positive 5 gives me -11. Divide by 11, divide by 11. I just found out in my XY combo that x equals -1. Okay, so it doesn't matter when I go to do the next part which equation I pick. Doesn't matter. I'll pick in this one, I'll just pick the top equation right here. I'm going to use this one. So where I have x, I'm going to put a -1. So 8 times -1 plus y equals -16. So here I get a -8 still plus y equals -16. So plus 8 y equals -16 plus 8 gives me a -8. So I just found out that my y in my combination is -8. There is my solution to my system of equations. Okay, take note that part that took the longest is stuff you've already practiced. It's now going through and changing one or both of your equations to get it so that you can go through and do that elimination method. And as I said, if I have to change both equations, I tend to pick a different method because there is only one solution unless we get a no solution or an infinite solution to an equation. So it's not going to matter which method you use. You are practicing all of them so that you learn to get one that is a faster method, okay, or the fastest method. So when I'm looking at this one, okay, so I've got my x's. I have a -7 and a -2. Not opposites. Not even the same number with the x's. Let's look at our y's. It's like having a 1 there. Not opposites because they're both positives. And also not even different numbers. And no, I can't use the elimination method on our constant or just standard number. So no, I can't go through and just change that. It has to be either my x or my y that gets eliminated. So if I look at this, to me, yes, we could go through and change both equations, but it's probably going to be best and fastest to get this y right here to be the opposite of this one. So if I wanted to get that to become a -3, I would need to go 1 times -3. So I'm going to take this whole set right here. Times -3. So I'm going to change everything in it. Okay, so we're going to go through and do our distribution. All right. -3 times -7 is going to give me a positive 21x. -3 times +1 is going to give me a -3y. And -3 times -19 is going to give me 57 positive. Double check on that. Make sure that you have that part right, because I would hate for you to make a mistake, or myself to make a mistake on that. Okay, so now we're going to work through and bring this equation down, okay? So remember, the reason I took that times a -3 and not a +3 is I wanted these to be opposites of each other. So when I'm writing this equation, -2x, notice how now it's a positive 3y, so I can eliminate those. Okay, so these eliminate. There we've got our opposites. So 21 plus a -2x is going to give me, or 21 minus 2, 19x, equals 57 minus 19, or plus a -19, is going to give me 38. Now we'll work to get x by itself, so divide by 19 to get x by itself. 38 divided by 19 is going to give me 2. So I just found out in my xy combination that my x equals 2. Okay, so it doesn't matter which equation I pick. Total choice, it can be one of the originals, it can be one of the new equation that I wrote. I'm going to go ahead and work off of this bottom equation just because, I don't know, that's the one that I'm going to pick this time. So wherever I have x, which is right here, I have to put a positive 2. Okay, so I've got -2 times a positive 2 plus 3y equals -19. Okay, so here I get -4 plus 3y equals -19. So then I would do plus 4 because I want to get y by itself. 3y equals -19 plus 4 is going to give me a -15. Divide by 3, divide by 3. Y equals -15 divided by 3 is a -5. So there is my solution to my system of equations. Okay, so let's try just a couple more, working through in this situation where neither the x nor the y, this one's kind of similar to the one that we just previously did, have the same numbers in them. So you can pick which one you want to go through and solve for, but you have to get where either your x or your y eliminate. So looking at this, couple different strategies. First of all, I have to have a positive versus a negative. And in both of these, my x's are positives, my y's are positives. So I'm going to have to take one of these equations times a negative something. This is where I have to pick what I want to do. Do I want to solve for x or solve for y? I'm going to go ahead and this time eliminate my x's. It's not going to matter. Okay, so I want to get this number right here to become a -6, which means I'm going to have to take this entire thing because I want the opposite of that, right? I'm going to have to take that entire equation times a -2. Why? Because -2 times a +3 gives me that -6. Okay, so now when I distribute, -2 times +3 gives me -6x, and I'm just writing it down underneath. to save myself some space. -2 times a +1 would be -2y. And then don't forget, you have to distribute to this back number also. You guys are not used to doing that, but when you're doing systems of equations and you're taking the whole equation times the number to change it, you have to remember you're distributing it to that answer portion also, or that constant. Okay, so -2 times 11 gives me -22. Okay, so I'm done looking at this now. So I'm going to look at the two equations that I have. Here's my ones that'll cancel or are opposites, a +6 and a -6. So now I'll go through and I'll work straight down. 3 minus 2, or plus a -2, gives me 1y. 24 minus 22, or 24 plus a -22, gives me 2. Divide by 1. Divide by 1. I just found out that my y is 2 divided by 1, which is 2. Okay, so doesn't matter which equation I pick. I'm going to erase this. I'm going to use the top equation. Okay, it doesn't matter which one I pick, but I'm going to substitute in. Where I have a y, I'm going to substitute in a 2. So I have 3x plus 2 equals 11. Minus 2, minus 2. 3x equals 11 minus 2 is 9. Divide by 3, divide by 3. 9 divided by 3 gives me 3. There's my solution to my system of equations. And a way to check yourself is to use a different method. I highly recommend working separate from somebody and then comparing answers, comparing work, seeing if you can figure out if you don't both have the same answer. It is a lot of work to go through and solve these, so I would hate for you to be practicing them wrong. So I highly, highly recommend partner work on this to kind of double check each other just to get your confidence